Okay, so thank you very much for having us here. I'm glad to be here in sunny Limerick. And we're going to stay more or less in the same type of domain, because I will be presenting today how we actually use crowdsourcing to manage terminology at HP. So, not to bore you with a lot of numbers, but just to give you a few facts. HP is actually over 300,000 people scattered around the world. We have 400,000 active products and services, and we support up to 56 languages as a whole. Our average language pairs are, of course, 19, but we go for certain products up to 56 languages. So with this complexity in mind, and basically because of this complexity, we had to make sure that we were managing our global branding on a global level. And so basically, there are a couple of reasons why we really needed to manage our brand terminology at a global level. First of all, as I mentioned, we need to make sure that we talk to all our customers, regardless of where they are in the world, and their language with a common image. If we want to sell our product around the world, we need to make sure that the brand image is important and is relayed regardless of the languages that the people are speaking. So there are also some financial aspects in making sure that you manage terminology properly. First one being that it increases the usability and the user experience, and usually that leads to less support calls, less customer unhappy. It also reduces the translation errors, which ultimately can reduce your translation cost. And it does definitely reduce the legal liability that your company may incur, which can, in some cases, cost you a lot of money. And it also has a time impact, because managing properly your terminology does shorten your time to market, and it does also make sure that your terminology is consistent throughout the board. So with all this in mind, we decided at HP to bring, all the people together. So it was a bit complex because, as I mentioned, we have 320,000 employees across the world. But we knew that within all those people, we had the knowledge of how we needed to communicate to our customers in a given language for a given product. So whether the people were in the marketing and were defining a marketing campaign, if they were product engineers designing the product, they knew what was going to be, the English term for a specific tagline or for a specific product. But we also knew that in the support center, the support engineers who were actually supporting our customers understood how certain terms needed to be translated. And also in the searchability team, for example, they knew how those terms were being searched by the customers, and sometimes things weren't fitting. So with all this in mind, we understood that we needed to bring all those people together and make sure that they agreed on a specific terminology. So the first thing was really, make sure that, and English is of course US English is our source language, we needed to ensure that we had one spelling per concept. You may all know one of our printers are called all-in-ones. They are the multifunctional printers. And for a couple of years, all-in-one had been written in a whole variety of ways, with hyphen, without hyphens, lowercase, uppercase. So, and this was already not nice in English, but it was creating a lot of complexity when we were starting to translate this. So we really needed to make sure that, at least on the English source, we agreed upon one spelling per concept. And we also agreed on what didn't need to be translated, because making sure that your brand is important is also defining, what really needs to remain in English, what is a brand image, and what has to be translated. And of course, we needed to agree also of what worked and what didn't work in other languages. So before even getting into the translation aspect of managing terminology, there was some work to be done on the English source. And then, of course, when we agreed upon one term per concept, we needed to make sure that we were mapping it with the relevant translation to go with it. So it was just making sure that this information, which was scattered around the company, was being made available to the people that needed it. And the thing is that in order to make it available to all those people, we've got a terminology repository, which is then linked to our translation management system and available for online lookup. But we really needed the key information in order to store it into this platform. And that's how we basically decided to approach the terminology management through a social media approach. So we of course needed a platform in order to bring all those people together and make sure that they were adhering and discussing and collaborating on what terminology was key. But this platform was also allowing us to evangelize within the company, so within the business unit, within the product and the marketing teams, that a high-quality terminology management was actually a benefit for all of them. Not only for the translators down the line, but also to make sure that the brand image was retained and that there was some consistency across the company and across the board. And that also helped us at the end to maintain those terminology standards. Because the marketing team who is now launching a new guideline is informing us right away, and we do have time to decide whether or not it has to be translated, and if it has to be translated, look for the community to come back with what should be the preferred translation before this marketing campaign is even launched into other languages. So we make it efficient for everyone. As far as the platform itself, we're really into the social media right now, so it needed to have the key feature and be efficient and easy enough for our community to collaborate. So just a few things. We wanted self-registration and easy voting and collaborating mechanism, and of course a heavy recognition of the key contributors. And that's how we started working with Localize in order to adapt one of their existing tools to make sure that we were focusing on three different areas. The user experience, which was key to us because we all know that if it's not easy, if it's not efficient, people won't use it. So we really put some effort in this user experience idea just to make sure that people were not spending too much time on top of their daily work to provide us the information we were looking for. Second thing was really the design. Design is really your community visual identity, and it's important to make your community a group. So for that reason, and in order to, again, convey the HP brand image, we decided to stick with the international look and feel that we've got within the company to make sure that, again, the community felt that there was one HP for this community. And of course, the third element was really the recognition, because as in any community, if we don't have a set of recognized and motivated people, you basically don't have anything. But in our case, there was two other aspects that were extremely important on top of the platform, which was basically the communication which was going around based on this platform. So we first needed to build a crowd. So even though the people existed within the company, we needed to make sure that we were catching them and making sure that we were building a sufficient crowd for this platform to work. But also that the word was spreading over and over, so we would have a community which made it relevant. And as I mentioned previously, the launch of this platform and also the work that has been going on and the amount of communication that has been done has really helped us evangelize the fact that managing terminology is important. For most of the people, it was, and translation was key, but they didn't realize that some work needed to be done up front in order to save everybody's time and money. So that has really helped us. And again, your community team members are actually the best ambassadors, and we've really seen that within the company. And the second aspect is, of course, motivation, which is really key to get your community going. And working with Relocalize, we have decided to make sure that our community was being listened, so they provide their input, but that they were also being heard. So we want to make sure that we do have some frequent releases of enhancement and new features to make sure that, based on our community feedback, to make sure that they feel listened and they feel heard. So talking about motivation, I'm just now going to hand it to Antoine, who's going to tell you what actually motivates people.
So yeah, Relocalize have developed the tool, but what I really want to talk to you about today is what motivates people. As we've seen this morning in Thomas' presentation, you might find the motivation in tools like Twitter or HP. Looking at motivation to translate a manual for a printer or for enterprise software is a lot harder. So there's three things that usually we've recognized that are important. It's like, how do you recruit the community, first of all? So where do you get your crowd? How do you engage with them over time? Like, it's great, like at the beginning of a program like this, there's a lot of excitement, but it's really keeping these guys engaged over time so that they continue to contribute to your community platform. And how do you reward them appropriately? So I'll go through the three of them briefly. Recruit a crowd. So we've looked at a number of things with a number of people we've been talking to in the industry. And in a lot of cases, our clients or people in this room have actually existing crowds that they can tap from. So if you look at Oracle, for instance, they have an international Oracle user group community that is existing. So that's where usually with our clients we say to them, look at what's existing already. Nokia has like a blog and a place where people can register. So again, you have like a crowd available to you rather than going to build it from scratch. In the case of HP, they have like internal portals as well as external portals where they can engage with their employees, they can engage with, Mario mentioned ambassadors, they can engage with partners that are under NDAs or marketing agencies that can contribute to this. So there's really a number of ways to recruit that crowd that you don't have to build from scratch, that you buy from professional crowds and really use what's existing in there in your social networking that already exists there. In a lot of cases, we've seen for a lot of companies, the first line of support is now driven by the crowd. So that's the kind of area that we suggest companies to look for to start with. Then I want to play a video to explain really what motivates people, because that's where you keep them engaged and you keep them motivated over time. So let me try to play this, and there's a sound on it. I don't know if many of you have heard of a damn pig in terms of what motivates people. We thought that was a very appropriate video in this case to explain the research that has been done that motivates people.
Our motivations are unbelievably interesting. I mean, I've been working on this for a few years, and I just find the topic still so amazingly engaging and interesting. So I want to tell you about that. The science is really surprising. The science is a little bit freaky. Okay? We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think. There's a whole set of unbelievably interesting studies. I want to give you two that call into question this idea that if you reward something, you get more of the behavior you want. If you punish something, you get less. So let's go from London to the mean streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the northeastern part of the United States. And let's talk about the study done at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Here's what they did. They took a whole group of students and they gave them a set of challenges. Things like memorizing strings of digits, solving word puzzles, other kinds of spatial puzzles, even physical tasks like throwing a ball through a hoop. Okay, they gave them these challenges, and they said to incentivize their performance, they gave them 3 levels of rewards. Okay, so if you did pretty well, you got small monetary reward. If you did medium well, you got a medium monetary reward. And if you did really well, if you were one of the top performers, you got a large cash prize. Okay, we've seen this movie before. This is essentially a typical motivation scheme within organizations, right? We reward the very top performers, we ignore the low performers, and the other folks kind of in the middle. Okay, get a little bit. So what happens? They do the test, they have these incentives, here's what they found out. 1, as long as your task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses work as they would be pay, the better their performance. Okay, that makes sense. But here's what happens. But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to poorer performance. Now this is strange, right? A larger reward led to poorer performance? How can that possibly be? Now what's interesting about this is that these folks here who did this are all economists. Two at MIT, one at the University of Chicago, one at Carnegie Mellon, okay? Top tier of the economics profession. And they're reaching this conclusion that seems contrary to what a lot of us learned in economics, which is that the higher the reward, the better the performance. And they're saying that once you get above rudimentary cognitive skill, it's the other way around. Which seems like this kind of, the idea that these rewards don't work that way seems vaguely left-wing and socialist, doesn't it? It's kind of this kind of weird socialist conspiracy. For those of you who have those conspiracy theories, I want to point out the notoriously left-wing socialist group that financed the research, the Federal Reserve Bank. So this is the mainstream of the mainstream coming to a conclusion that's quite surprising. It seems to defy the laws of behavioral physics. So this is strange. It's strange finding. So what do? They say, this is free. Let's go test it somewhere else. Maybe that $60 prize isn't sufficiently motivating for an MIT, right? So let's go to a place where $50 is actually more significant relatively. Right? So let's take the experiment. We're going to go to Madurai, India, rural India, where $50, $60, whatever the number was, is actually a significant sum of money. So they replicated the experiment in India roughly as follows. Small rewards, the equivalent of 2 weeks' salary. Small performance, low performance, 2 weeks' salary. Medium performance, about a month's salary. High performance, about 2 months' salary. Okay, so those are real good incentives. Okay, so you're going to get a different result here. Well, what happened though was that the people offered the medium reward did no better than the people offered the small reward. But this time around, the people offered the top reward, they did worse of all. Higher incentives led to worse performance. What's interesting about this is that it actually isn't all that anomalous. This has been replicated over and over and over again by psychologists, by some extent by sociologists, and by economists, over and over and over again. For simple, straightforward tasks, those kinds of incentives, if you do this, then you get that, they're great. For tasks that are algorithmic, set of rules where you have to just follow along and get a right answer, if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, outstanding. But when the task gets more complicated, when it requires some conceptual, creative thinking, those kinds of motivators demonstrably don't work. In fact, money is a motivator at work, but in a slightly strange way. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. What's curious about, there's another paradox here, which is that the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough, take the issue of money off the table. Pay people enough so that they're not thinking about money, they're thinking about the work. Now, once you do that, it turns out there are 3 factors that science shows lead to better performance. Not to mention personal satisfaction. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is our desire to be self-directed, to direct our own lives. Now, in many ways, traditional notions of management run afoul of that. Management is great if you want compliance, but if you want engagement, which is what we want in the workforce today as people are doing more complicated, sophisticated things, self-direction is better. Let me give you some examples of this. Almost radical forms of self-direction in the workplace. Let's start with this company right here, Atlassian, an Australian company, it's a software company, and they do something really cool. Once a quarter, on Thursday afternoon, they say to their developers, for the next 24 hours, you can work on anything you want. You can work on it the way you want, you can work on it with whomever you want. All we ask is that you show the results to the company at the end of those 24 hours. And this fun kind of meeting, not a star chamber session, but just fun meeting with beer and cake and fun and other things like that. It turns out that that one day of pure, undiluted autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing software, a whole array of ideas for new products that otherwise would never emerge. One day. Now, this is not an if-then incentive. This is not the sort of thing that I would have done 3 years ago before I knew this research. I would have said, you want people to be creative and innovative? Give them a freaking innovation bonus. If you do something cool, I'll give you $2,500. They're not doing this at all. They're essentially saying, you probably want to do something interesting. Let me just get out of your way. One day of autonomy produces things that never emerge. Now, let's talk about mastery. Mastery is our urge to get better at stuff. We like to get better at stuff. This is why people play musical instruments on the weekend. You have all these people who are acting in ways that seem irrational economically. They play musical instruments on weekends. Why? It's not going to get them a mate. It's not going to make them any money. Why are they doing it? Because it's fun. Because you get better at it, and that's fun. Go back in time a little bit. I imagine this if I went to my first economics professor, a woman named Mary Alice Schulman, and I went to her in 1983 and said, Professor Schulman, can I talk to you after class for a moment? Yeah. I got this inkling. I got this idea for a business model. I just want to run it past you. Here's how it would work. You get a bunch of people around the world who are doing highly skilled work, but they're willing to do it for free and volunteer their time, 20, sometimes 30 hours a week. Okay, you're looking at some skepticism there. Oh, but I'm not done. And then what they create, they give it away rather than sell it. It's going to be huge. Because she truly would have thought I was insane. Right? You can fly in the face of so many things. But what do you have? You have Linux powering 1 out of 4 corporate servers in Fortune 500 companies. Apache powering more than the majority of web servers. Wikipedia. What's going on? Why are people doing this? Why are these people, many of whom are technically sophisticated, highly skilled people who have jobs? Okay? They have jobs. They're working at jobs for pay, doing sophisticated technological work. And yet, during their limited discretionary time, they do equally, if not more, technically sophisticated work, not for their employer, but for someone else for free. That's a strange economic behavior. Economists who looked into it, why are they doing this? It's overwhelmingly clear. Challenge and mastery, along with making a contribution. That's it. What you see more and more is the rise of what you might call purpose motive. Is that more and more organizations want to have some kind of transcendent purpose. Partly because it makes coming to work better, partly because that's the way to get better talent. And what we're seeing now is, in some ways, when the profit motive becomes unmoored from the purpose motive, bad things happen. Bad things ethically sometimes, but also bad things just like not good stuff, like crappy products, like lame services, like uninspiring places to work. That when the profit motive is paramount, or when it becomes completely unhitched from the purpose motive, people don't do great things. More and more organizations are realizing this and sort of disturbing the categories between what's profit and what's purpose. And I think that actually heralds something interesting. I think that the companies organizations that are flourishing, whether they're profit, for profit, or somewhere in between, are animated by this purpose. Let me give you a couple of examples. Here's the founder of Skype. He says, our goal is to be disruptive, but in the cause of making the world a better place. Pretty good purpose. Here's Steve Jobs. I want to put a ding in the universe. All right? That's the kind of thing that might get you up in the morning racing to go to work. So I think that we are purpose maximizers, not only profit maximizers. I think the science shows that we care about mastery very, very deeply. And the science shows that we want to be self-directed. And I think the big takeaway here is that if we start treating people like people, and not assuming that they're simply horses, slower, smaller, better smelling horses, we get past this kind of ideology of carrots and sticks and look at the science, I think we can actually build organizations and work lives that make us better off. But I also think they have the promise to make our world just a little bit better.
Okay, so a bit of a long video to explain a concept, but I wanted to get to talk about these 3 concepts that Dan Pink is presenting: autonomy, mastery, and purpose, for the purpose of our conference today. So if you look at autonomy, I'm not sure how it works in Twitter, but I'm sure they give quite a lot of autonomy to their translators. If you look at examples in Google or Facebook, where they give about 20% of their time to the employees to work on projects, that whatever they want. The only thing they have to do is report at the end of the day. I believe a lot of products in Google came out of that. We did an experiment as well with one of our clients where we gave our translators, with the participation of our client, a free day to say, work on whatever you want, just at the end of the day, report to us something that is valuable to that client. And by the end of the day, we've only done one first experiment, but they came back initially with kind of shy attempts, but around terminology, around style guides, improvements, these kind of things. So something valuable to the client, and we're going to run a couple of other experiments that way. Mastery, I think in our case, in our industry, is probably more related to the linguistic aspects, like where people get motivated like to participate on Twitter or other type of clients that do translation with the community because they want to master a language or because they're interested in contributing to knowledge, you know, for the rest of the world, as well as having that product in their language. The purpose, I think, is an interesting one. Like when you have targeted community, and this morning again Twitter talked about the Basque and the Catalan that were highly motivated. That's like a passion, a purpose. Like these guys just want to show that they have like some sort of national identity and push that envelope. We've seen that as well. I think Symantec had an experiment a couple of years ago where they did Norton into a number of languages through a crowdsourcing effort. And the first language that came back within 48 hours, I believe, was Klingon. Right? So you have a real targeted community here that has like a purpose and an interest in mastering that language, I guess, as well. Apparently to the highest level of quality it came back. And also I think in terms of purpose, like HP, we've seen them moving towards a place where they're advertising a lot at the moment as make it matter. So yes, we build technology, but that technology matters to a lot of people. It impacts the lives of a lot of people. So that's where the purpose is coming from. So I think these three kind of aspects, the autonomy, the mastery, and the purpose, if you're running any crowdsourcing project, are key to your success over time, to keep your crowd engaged and motivated beyond the rewards, financial rewards or others, as we've seen in the video. Now Marion is going to show you a few kind of a screenshot of the application itself that we had developed for them.
Okay, so now that we actually know what motivates people and we've got the recipe for success, let me just quickly, because we're running out of time, show you a couple of screenshots from our community. So again, autonomy. So make sure that we provide the employees and the people who are going to be part of the community as much information as possible so they can decide themselves whether or not they want to be part of this community. So they do have some key metrics here available, as well as in the bottom. I'm not sure you can read them, but those are keywords which are currently being debated in the community. So they can see right away whether or not it makes sense for them to collaborate. So that's the autonomy part. Well, user experience, easy to use. Again, that's one where we basically have a mechanism that we can send messages to our community when there's a new term or new concept to be voted on. So, and that can be done through a filtering mechanism. So whether it's on the language, on the domain, on the type of content that they're expert into. So they basically are asked to provide their translation or to vote on a term. So make it matter again is one of them. So they do have some contextual information that help them understand the concept of the term. And then they can just, you know, as a quick game, pick the one that they think is relevant or even propose a new candidate. And we were talking about, you know, recognition. Again, this is key. It was clear at Twitter that the recognition of the community was one of the key elements. So we did make sure that our community was being recognized through a set of badging, but also the little accuracy stars, which are not only counting the number of votes that you're making, but the accuracy of those votes. And of course, a profile mechanism that the user can enhance whenever. Rewarding is also something that we use in order to make sure that the people stay motivated. And we do have, you know, a set of rewarding programs which are run outside of the tool, you know, goodies, contests, etc. But we wanted to make sure that people who are collaborating with their proposed translation were also getting something out of it. So when they click the submit button, what they can see is the term that they voted on, but also how many people voted for the other terms. So it's kind of a give and take approach. And of course, such a community requires some, you know, background tool set and features. So this is the administrative side, which basically consolidate all this information and make it easy for the administrator to decide which term to be picked as final for a given languages, or to pass it through a terminology console to make sure that we all agree upon the term and to be able to put it in the terminology repository. And just to finalize, another quick thing that we've got in the tool is all the reporting mechanisms. So we did work with We Localize on making sure that we had some key metrics and reporting in real time, which could be used to communicate with our audience and with our community, but also to communicate outside of the community, within the company, the actual importance of this community and what we could bring it out of it. So this information is really key for us to keep the communication going and to keep the motivation going. And with that, I'll end up. Thank you very much.
I don't know if we have time for questions, if there are any.
Yeah, maybe we do 2 questions.
And I don't know, but I will
Thank you.
be around.
When you compare your community approach with your previous approach, because you must have any terminology governance process in your company, how would you rate the performance increase or the performance decrease? So it's a short question, but maybe you have a long answer.
I can do it quick. So basically what we've seen so far is really the time that we're gaining. So in the past, we had this process to identify the term and then to try to find the translation, etc., which was taking a long time. So we did see already a good improvement in the timeline that it's getting. And we also ensure, as I was mentioning, that the people who have the input at the end of the chain, so in the support engineer or in the searchability team, for example, they're being asked also for their input, which was kind of hard to manage all together within the governance council. So that's basically the 2 areas where we're already seeing a good improvement.
Thank you.
This is a quick one. I was wondering, the admin dashboards that you have, the people who take care of that, you said that they have the last word. Are these professional linguists or are they selected from the community? Also volunteers that have emerged from the community?
Okay, so the administrator side actually don't have the linguistic background. So in order to make sure that we make the final call, we are using, as Twitter does, a penalty or a percentage approach. So based on the number of users, we look at the numbers for each of them and whether or not they are from this specific area, etc. And we also have on the side in our overall terminology management process a governance council, which is eventually making the last word whenever there is a conflict.
Okay. So